I checked the time on my watch. The time was 3 o'clock. It's almost time to head out of work, I decided. I dialed the secretary after pressing the selector button. I'm going, I remarked to Elle. If anything, I still have the dean. I'll be gone through Monday. You know, there's no fussing when it comes to fishing. I want to be by myself, I said. Elle gave a sympathetic grin and fluttered her eyelashes. She said, Are you going alone? Obviously not, no. Considering that Rita was going to access her data, my wife and kids will remain at home. Release her. Elle's hint made perfect sense to me. No, I'm not in a relationship. Other women do not exist for me, other than my wife, but I disregarded my secretary's clear indications each time they occurred, and now she was unable to stop it. Yuri, are you going far away? Elle inquired. Long distance off? You'll discover. You won't find me, I laughed back, looking forward to my much-needed holiday. Elle gave me a curious glance that betrayed a hint of sorrow and sympathy. With caution, she turned and shut the door behind her. I made a detour at a store on my way home and purchased a magnificent finished spinning rod, a few extra reels of fishing line, and some hooks. That concludes it. I proceeded to my car thinking to myself, now I'm going home to change my clothes, and then off I go. I even began to whistle a melody. I was in a fantastic mood, the day was lovely, and the sun shone. Rita was waiting for me when I got home. I hurriedly put on my jacket and packed my belongings, including my fishing rod. I heard my wife's voice as I turned to go. And to bid farewell, she stated. Of course, I said, giving her a hug and a kiss on the lips. She touched my cheek tenderly with her hand. My dear, get plenty of rest. She said, don't miss me too much. Upon glancing at my spouse, I noticed a tear trickling down her cheek. Maybe I'll forget about this fishing trip and stay home to spend the weekend with my family, thought I. Rita, however, comforted me, saying, No, don't be alarmed. Everything will work out okay. She gave me another kiss on the lips and told me to wear warm clothes in the morning because my back hurt and it was frigid outside. She nudged me in the direction of the door. I feel so fortunate to have such a wonderful wife, I said to myself as I was going. Even after over 20 years of cohabitation, our relationship is still very much that of newlyweds. Since then, Olia and Kia, our 2 daughters, have been born. Rita quit her job and dedicated herself to parenting our kids after the birth of our youngest. She is the one that genuinely brings happiness into our home, even if I brought money into the family. In particular because there was a lot to bring. I inherited from my father's sizable antiques business. I broadened it and eventually started making jewelry of my own, copying the designs of well-known artists and selling them. My family's business prospered and they had enough money. After hiring the dean, my cousin, I appointed him as my deputy after 6 months. He was such a good fit for the company that I was considering giving him some ownership stakes in the near future. I was doing great, all things considered. We took family vacations down south once or twice a year. I did not spare anything for Rita because I loved her so much. I was willing to lose my life for her as long as she was content with me, and I could see that wonderful, gentle grin on her face. Rita gave me her full attention in return, and I felt her love. The kids grew older over time, and I had the impression that my family's bliss would last forever. I filled up and poured 2 cans of gasoline for the boat at the city's departure. I got off the ring road and onto the highway in 10 minutes. Not quite fall, but not quite winter either. It was the middle of October. The leaves on the trees had not fallen off completely. Brilliant patches of foliage clung to the fingertips against a background of gray-green pine needles. However, the north wind was just around the corner, and the final vestiges of summer would soon cover the sidewalks and streets in a vibrant, rustling carpet. As I arrived, I saw a tiny cottage with pine timbers. I realized that it was slightly colder inside than outdoors as soon as I was inside. I should light the fireplace and have a drink, thought I. I started a fire in the tiny living room in preparation for our fishing excursion tomorrow morning. I opened an old closet in the kitchen and discovered a bottle of barley whiskey that had never been opened and a clean glass. From the kitchen window, I could still see the lakeside and the trees even though it was growing darker. The pines groaned and shook their tops in time with the wind that was building across the lake. There was an odd silence as the wind's dust settled. The lake's slow breathing could be heard because of how silent it was. It was a stunning location. I went back to the living room and turned on a tape recorder that was sitting on a little table. The speaker began to play the tune of Chuck Berry's song, which is one of my favorites. Although women are ferocious creatures, life would be incredibly dull without them, persuaded me Chuck the Joker. I settled into the wicker chair by the fireplace and poured myself a lovely glass of barley whiskey. I wanted to get away from the daily grind and just sit and gaze at the fire. I wasn't in a rush. My favorite music was playing, and I felt like the happiest man alive. The wood in the fireplace turned to smoldering embers as they burnt through. The wind picked up by dusk and rattled the windows and shutters. If I don't add wood, the fireplace will soon go out, I thought. This weather didn't appeal to me to go outside, but there was nowhere to go. The firewood was placed outside the boathouse, so I'd have to go get it. I pulled on my jacket, stepped outside, and descended the untamed stone steps with caution all the way to the beach. The road was brightly visible in the moonlight, since a strong wind had blown away the little clouds. Beneath a cover that extended from the roof, the wood was neatly arranged against the wall. I heard something rustle from behind me just as I had settled the second log onto the bowed right arm. I hurriedly spun around, but too late to avert the strike to the head that knocked me unconscious. A searing pain penetrated my entire body as something crunched in my skull. Then I fainted as the silvery sky began to blur before my eyes. I woke up from having my underarms hauled around. "Did you kill him?" I was surprised to hear Rita's voice. "No, just amazed so far," a strange, smoky male voice remarked. "You're not required to remain here. Go home with your automobile. Recall that you weren't present." I heard, "Everything will be fine." My feet crunched on the pebbles. "Please do not call me." That same voice uttered, "I'll find you myself." Under my arms, I was scooped up once more. The man's breath hit the back of my neck with force. It weighed a lot. I assumed he was referring to me. I then realized that he wanted to kill me. But I didn't feel afraid for some reason. My response was entirely innate. I snapped around and seized hold of my opponent. Suddenly, he stumbled and fell onto his back. I tried to grasp his throat by piling on top of him, but the stranger soon realized what had happened and struck me in the head with his fist. I let out a pained cry, but my hands closed around his throat even tighter. The man underneath me gave a tremendous wheeze. He was able to roll over me and fling up his leg. We tumbled into the water and lost our balance. Now that he was above me, my opponent was attempting to submerge me. I placed my feet on the stony bottom, as it wasn't that deep, and then abruptly stood up. I gave him a head-on-chin blow. The stranger momentarily released his hold. I nearly leapt out of the water, snatching his throat once more as I managed to get past him. The enemy choked, attempting to pierce the surface with his head, but I stopped it. With my hands around my assassin's throat, I stood in the water. I felt like my garments were dragging me down. For a brief while, my opponent was able to lift himself off the bottom. With his mouth hanging open, he drew a big breath, lost his balance, and vanished beneath the water once more. I planted one foot as firmly as I could on the boat dock's piling and the other on a huge rock that lay on the bottom. I gripped the murderer's throat and pushed his head beneath the water. I can't even remember how long I stood there, gulping for air and spitting up. The man stopped moving altogether. I released my grip on the fingers, causing his slack body to come to the surface. It bobbed in the waves and thudded softly against the pier's piling. I dragged the body ashore, although it was hard. His clothes were searched, but nothing turned up. He carried no weapons at all, not even a rifle. I walked carefully away from the body besides the water and towards the boathouse. I entered covertly from the lake's edge and slipped out the entrance. Naturally, I didn't turn on the light. Well, it's here somewhere, I said to myself after spending a long time searching the shelves in the dark before discovering what I was looking for. Making an effort to be silent, I grabbed a large metal container off the shelf. He picked at the tightly fitting lid with his fingernails for a considerable amount of time. I finally opened it, breaking a couple of fingernails in the process. I reached inside the silica gel and rummaged through the tidy package. All of stuff was there, thank God. My hands held a well-oiled TT handgun after I opened the oiled paper. 2 magazines containing ammo and the suppressor were packaged separately. I grabbed one right away and jerked the bolt. Attaching the silencer takes some time. I tucked the rifle beneath his belt and engaged. The safety. As I tried to stand up, I slid on the stone steps and kicked my leg. Well, time to see who was left in the house, I said. I was made more sober by the pain. I glanced up at the lake and ascended the porch with caution. The house was lit up, and the door was partially open, giving off a warm scent. With caution, I looked into the living room. A weird man was enjoying a glass of whiskey while seated on a wicker chair in front of the fireplace. Leaning on the doorframe, I must have revealed too much. So, is everything okay? The man did not look away. He just kept his eyes fixed on the flames, as if he thought there was nothing to be afraid of. We'll have a drink, and then we can go, he replied. By the way, that and her boyfriend had already left. I chose to take action without following protocol. Hands on your head, I remarked in a composed, almost kind manner. The man leapt out of his chair, surprising me by toppling the whiskey bottle on the table and looking dazed at me while pointing the gun at me. Put your hands behind your head. Reverse the direction. Turn around, I said again, my tone cold. The gun I was holding appeared quite real. The man obeyed, raising his hands and turning away from me. With a rapid step inside the room, I used my pistol handle to strike him in the back of the head. Yes, the communist Mao Tung was right 1,000 times over. The rifle gives birth to power, and even though I have a gun in my hand instead of a rifle, it doesn't change the essence of this expression. She said, "Oh, you sneaky," with a cry. Chuck Berry once sang, "Women are bloodthirsty cats, but it's awfully boring without them." It makes me think of that song. Yes, it really couldn't get any more dull. How did they treat me? My ancestral baseball bat was above the fireplace when I looked up. How did I not get killed in the first place? My mind was filled with 1,000 questions, the most crucial of which was why. I was no question that Rita was a big player in this entertaining event. However, the most crucial question is, why? What drove her to take part in her own husband's murder, the father of her children? Even if a woman detested her spouse, she wouldn't act in such a manner. There was obviously some extremely tasty seduction going on. Sweetheart? Is a lady willing to do anything, even murder, only for a new love? She would gladly part with her previous relationship in order to pursue a new one, or, to put it more simply, a new love. When was that done by her? Well, because I still don't know the answers to these questions, I'll give that some thought later. I taped the mutilated body's arms to the armrests and placed it in a chair. I took a sip right out of the neck, finding whiskey at the bottom still. The stranger's eyelids flickered a few times while I stared at him. Though he's pretending to be a hostage, he's awake. I gave him a gun pat on the cheeks. Abandon your pretense. The man said, "Where's Vasilik?" in a feeble voice. You have drowned your Vasilik, I sarcastically told him. Not wanting to stop him from decaying, I pulled him to the shore. I swigged again. The uncle gave me a hideous look and tried to shred the scotch with stubbornness, asking, "Did you kill him?" "No, I just drowned him," I said with a drunken laugh. "Hear me out, you're done." Completed. A few times, the man wrenched his arms as though he wanted to rip off the armrests. You'll never get out of here alive. He was right when I watched the man writhing in the chair, as I believed I saw smoke coming out of his ass and foam flowing out of his mouth. It seems like nobody was going to bother me, so feel free to shoot me. Right now, that seems to be their best option. Now who is they? I inquired. I suppose if you tell me everything, it won't come to that, I said as I slowly got to my feet. Who do you think you are? Once more, the stranger shook his hands. One thing I was good at was seeing a lot in my time. But I could make people talk easier. See if we can get things going. Using the butt of my revolver, I gave the man a sharp kick to the teeth. He spat out several bloody teeth and coughed. I suppose he won't require them in the near future. With the same fervor as previously, the man swore, lisping ridiculously without his front teeth. You're going to die, you bastard. He was acting like a young child, which made me a little sad. I'll have to shoot him in the knee. I was told everything after a torturous hour and a half of questioning. Almost everything, that is.